Hi everyone. Today, the title of my sermon is Leadership. What is leadership? Whether we like it or not, we are all called to be a leader in some way or another. Well, someone might ask, well, then what is a leader? What are the characteristics of a leader? And some people might say, well, a leader is wise. They're strong, they're loyal, they're kind. I can trust a leader. But in the words of Dan Allender, if anyone looks to you for wisdom, counsel, or direction, then you are a leader. He did not say if you are strong, you're a leader. He didn't say if you're wise, you're a leader. He simply said anyone. Anyone who has a follower. You can't be a leader without a follower, right? Well, another quote from Allender, Dan Allender, he says, no one is a mere follower. If you are a follower of God, for example, then you are called to lead. Every believer is called to help someone grow into maturity. And such is the core calling of a leader. And I'm quoting to you from, if you haven't recognized by now, Dan Allender, but I'm quoting specifically from his book, Leading with a Limp. And if you have not read this book or do not have this book, I do highly recommend it. This book we are reading right now for personal spiritual disciplines. And he starts this book off with talking about reluctant leadership. And if you were actually in chapel a few weeks back, you would have heard Brother Daniel, who also talked on the very same topic about reluctant leadership and how today he's seeing that more as a problem of people being reluctant to be the leaders God has called them to be. Well, as we are reluctant sometimes to be the leaders God has directed us to be, we think, well, I'm weak, so that means I can't be a leader. I keep thinking about all the things that I can't do. I can't do this, I can't do that, I'm not a very good speaker. Whatever it is, so many things we can pick at ourselves constantly saying, well, I'm not good at this, I'm not good at that. But in reality, and as Allender points out, those weaknesses oftentimes can be our biggest strengths. And as he goes along throughout more of this book, he continues along that path of explaining more about weaknesses and how those weaknesses are interrelated with our strengths. All throughout Scripture, we see so many leaders. We see Moses, we see David, we see so many others that we've constantly heard of. And they were called to lead, yet at times they were also reluctant to lead. Many times we see their weaknesses. Moses was a great leader. He was greatly used of God. But through his entire ministry, he refused to do what God had asked him to do. He refused to circumcise the people. But yet God used him anyway. So when we look at these characters in the Bible and see how, though even through weaknesses and times where they failed, as Moses, for instance, they were still willing to act, as we should be willing to act. We may fail, we may do wrong, we may say the wrong thing, but we are still called to do it anyways. Even when we feel like, well, I still can't do that. But when we focus on the weaknesses and we're saying, I can't do that or I can't do this, we're focusing on ourselves and thinking we're the ones who makes it happen. But did not Scripture say that I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me? That it is from His strength and not our own. So why do people get this idea that leaders have to be perfect? You know, we live in a world today, a society today that is so bombarded with perfection. You know, this is the way to reach perfection. Lose weight to reach perfection. Eat right to reach perfection. Become a music singer, become a celebrity to reach perfection. There's so many ideals that are thrown at us that give this ideal of perfection today. You know, but God did not call leaders to be perfect. We are not called to be perfect. He called leaders that His perfection could be seen through us, not the other way around. As people in this world, we place also a lot of expectations on our leaders, whether it's on our political leaders, whether it's in the church leaders. You know, it doesn't matter. And actually, right now is a perfect time on talking about leadership. We just had the elections a few days ago, and we place a tremendous amount of expectations on our leaders. But yet, when they don't do the right thing, when they don't say the right thing, or they don't say what we think they should, or do what we think they should, you know, we think that, oh, they're not a good leader. You know, they don't know what they're doing. We would do the same thing within the church. We see leaders and we place such high value on their position that we forget that they're just people, that they are human like everyone else. You know, as a leader, we need to learn that to show our humanness is not a bad thing. To be human is not a bad thing. To celebrate our humanness. God created humanity. You know, through our humanness, we are weak. But God chose those all the time, throughout Scripture, throughout time, through today, not because of their weaknesses, but through their weaknesses, they became strong because He still wanted to use them as a leader. You know, we become strong as leaders when we recognize our weaknesses, when we are aware of them, when we know them, when we're not afraid to tell people about them. You know, a lot of people, they talk about, leaders need to be truthful, they need to be honest, which is true, they should be. But honesty, not always just in the way of me being honest, like me, for instance, me saying something to you, honesty, but being honest with yourself. As you are a leader, you should be honest with yourself, knowing that, you know what, I'm not perfect. I can't do everything right all the time. But through God, He can help me through those times when I don't know what I'm doing. And when we're aware of those weaknesses, when we are accepting those weaknesses, when we accept how human we really are, becoming a leader for God maybe would become just a little bit easier because we wouldn't place such perfected expectations upon ourselves, but we would place our expectations in Him instead. So what kind of leader are you? What kind of leader am I? A question I've been recently trying to ask myself and find the answer. What kind of leader do you want to become? Are you allowing what you cannot do to prevent you from what you can do? You know, as I am a leader, you are also a leader. Celebrate humanity. Celebrate your spirituality, your failures, your triumphs. Celebrate your life, the life that God has given you to lead, to direct in some way to someone. There is someone He has placed within your path to lead. Are you leading them the way He has asked you to? I pray today for you, and I hope that through this message you will see that you don't have to rely on yourself anymore. That may sound odd, but you don't have to rely on yourself to be the leader God has asked you to be, or be a little hesitant in accepting the leader He's asked you to be, because through Him, you are already that leader. Don't allow yourself to keep you from being the leader He has already called you to be, that He created you to be. Whether it is for one moment in time, whether it is for 10 days, 20 days, or 10 years from now, He has still called you to lead in some capacity. So I pray for you today. I pray that you would allow God to show you the leader He has asked of you. Whether it is that leader that is just willing to step out in the crowd and lead the crowd for one moment, or whether it is the leader who is willing to lend a hand when nobody else sees, or the leader that will be in front of thousands for the rest of their life. It doesn't matter what kind of leader it is. It matters that you are one, and then He's asked you to be one for the purpose of His kingdom. So I just pray that you would go forth today encouraged and renewed in your hearts and in your mind to know that we are all leaders that God has asked of us to be. Thank you.